We thought we were moving on to 2024. Well, we were wrong. We've got news on one last five-star prospect that is uncommitted, unsigned in 2023. But then I promise you, we are turning the page. We're going to start talking QB Dominos. They're falling. There's teams out there that could sign the best class ever. We're going to talk about that as well. But right now, let's bring on Director of Recruiting at On3, Chad Simmons. Chad, five-star tight end Duce Robinson has said that he will commit and sign by April 1. The signing window is open February 1 to April 1, so he is taking his time, and he does have time. But what do you think this decision date means, and what teams are involved?
Decision date means obviously that he still plans, at least to consider strongly to play football in college, and maybe college football and baseball. Obviously he's weighing a lot of different options right now. I know it's a big family decision. Family's listening to a lot of different outlets as well. From the MLB standpoint, the best advice of, how to play this out, what to consider. Does this help or hurt draft stock? There's a lot going into this, but yeah, we don't know the exact timeline. We just expect Duce now to commit, and like you said, sign with the school between now and April 1. He said it could be this month, could be March, could be April 1st, so we'll see what happens, but we do expect him to make a decision and sign with the college between now and then.
Heading into February 1st signing day, we all felt that Georgia was trending. Do we still feel Georgia's the team to beat, even though he's delayed his decision?
Yes, Josh. Based on my intel, I still like where Georgia's at with USC right behind there. I think there's some confidence, in both camps at USC and Georgia. Ironically, both coaches, had the final visit on the same day with Duce Robinson the week ahead of signing day on that Monday. Lincoln Riley and his staff went in first, and Kirby Smart and his staff went in late that night. And I think it comes down to those two schools. There's been some talk about Texas still being in the mix. Of course, Alabama and Oregon were one time mentioned as well, but I think this one comes down to Georgia and USC. And I still give that nod to the University of Georgia.
All right, Duce Robinson, the final five-star who's uncommitted, unsigned in the 2023 class. We'll find out here in the next 5 or 6 weeks where he's going to end up. All right, turning the page to 24. Four-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo, the number 5 rated wide receiver in the country, was offered by Alabama on Monday. He's going to take a visit there on March 5th. What does this new Alabama offer do for Ryan Wingo's recruitment?
It gets Alabama's foot in the door. We'll see what happens after that visit. Obviously, typically a recruit, doesn't go to Alabama and leave disappointed. So we expect Wingo to have a great time in Tuscaloosa. But obviously, I think it goes deeper than that with his connection to new offensive coordinator Tommy Rees. Rees offered Wingo as a freshman when he was the OC at Notre Dame. So they have that relationship, and Wingo's been talking to Holman Wiggins, the receivers coach, Freddie Roach as well from Alabama in recent weeks, and even going back into the fall. So there's definitely some dialogue there between him and Alabama. But I think the biggest thing is that connection with Rees and just getting on campus, see how he feels.
Who are the main contenders for Ryan Wingo right now?
He's been all over the place. A&M, Oregon, Tennessee, Clemson. Of course, in-state school, Missouri. I think right now I like where Tennessee's at, and to keep an eye on Clemson as well. But Alabama will definitely have a chance to make that move next month.
All right, recruiting fans, it's time for you to do me a favor. Like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. If you're a fan of the Inside Scoop or the Hard Count, that's JD Pickell Show live Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hit the subscribe button to the On3 YouTube page. All right, Chad, we're moving on. Another 2024 stud, 4-star edge, Danny Okoye, the number 1 player in Oklahoma, the number 102nd best player overall. He goes 6'5", 230 pounds. He's visited Tennessee and Colorado in January. What's the latest on his recruitment? Where do things stand?
I think it's still pretty early for Okoye. I think he wants to get out more. Obviously, spring, summer may take his recruitment into the season as well and not be one of those guys committing in June or July. I think right now, the visits to Tennessee and Colorado definitely opened his eyes and will likely get him back to both of those schools, especially I think Colorado. Had a great time out there in Boulder, likes what Dion, Coach Prime, as he goes by, is building and putting together there at the University of Colorado. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back out there for maybe the spring game. That's kind of getting a lot of buzz now around Colorado this spring. But the in-state school I think to watch too as well is Oklahoma State. Oklahoma's owned him also, but the one in Stillwater has more buzz around that than And Nebraska came in recently with an offer this week as well. They're definitely on his radar too. And he wants to get out and check out Lincoln, spend some time with Matt Rule and see what's going on there. But I think it's pretty wide open at this time for Okoye.
Yeah, I think it's going to start to heat up, but like you said, we'll see if Deion, Coach Prime, can keep Colorado involved. Another one that Colorado's involved with is four-star defensive lineman Brandon Davis-Swain. He's out of Michigan, and typically this would be a Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State battle, but Coach Prime out there in Boulder has Colorado among his top schools, and Davis-Swain and his family actually went out to Boulder and made a visit there recently. Brandon Davis-Swain's father, said this: "Our time with Coach Prime, it was a real spiritual thing. God was definitely in the room. There were some tears shed." Chad, if your father is crying on an official visit after talking to the head coach, I mean, isn't that a slam dunk? Is it time to put in an RPM prediction for Brandon Davis-Swain to Colorado?
Well, let's see if he has those same emotions talking to Harbaugh maybe in next month or something like that too. Let's
You think
make
Dad
sure
might cry talking to Harbaugh?
Yeah, we'll see. You'll see what happens in the coming weeks. But I do think right now that visit was very impactful. Obviously, not only just the dad, but the kid as well. Swain Davis, a former Notre Dame commitment out of Michigan, had a great time at Colorado. Spent a lot of time with defensive line Coach Hill, and liked the plan, liked the defensive scheme, how he could fit in there potentially. And I think they'll definitely get another visit, at least one more from that family. And I think he's working right now to cut that list down to somewhere between, I think, 5 and 10 schools. I expect definitely to Colorado to be on that list and to make that cut, and maybe the final cut down the road as well. But they've definitely put themselves in a good position coming out of that trip to Boulder.
All right, Chad, thanks for dropping all the Simmons scoop on us. Let's talk QB dominoes because they're about to start falling in the 2024 class. Not all position groups are as reactionary and intertwined as the quarterback position. Maybe it's because teams generally only take one or two, so there's not a lot of spots available. But when it comes to QB recruiting, when one guy makes a decision, it could impact several other QBs and programs. It's a complicated web of recruiting, but we are here to break it all down for you. The 2024 cycle started last week, but a lot of teams already have at least one quarterback committed. Just this month, or only 9 days in, there's already been 3 quarterback commitments. On the 6th, you had 4-star Anthony Maddox commit to Texas A&M. On the 3rd, Walker White, 4-star quarterback, commits to Auburn. And on the 1st, Cali quarterback Austin Mack commits to Washington. Let's bring on Chad Simmons, Director of Recruiting here at On3, to talk 2024 QB dominoes. Chad, as we look at the top 20 QBs here, I see that 4 out of the top 10 are committed and 9 out of the top 20 have found a school. What is it about this time of year that where one QB commitment can trigger a series of QB commitments?
You know, obviously, guys, like you said, Josh, quarterbacks want to lock their spot in and then also start recruiting that class. You know, they want to, like you said, it's not like they're a receiver where schools take 4 or 5, offensive line 4 to 6, DBs a group of 5, 6, 7. Quarterbacks are typically one spot per class. Every now and then schools will try to swoop in and try to sign 2 to fill that quarterback room with the transfer portal and what's going on there. But that they know spots are limited. They want to find the right fit, the right offense, also recruit those guys they want to play with on the next level. So right now and into the spring is a pretty hot time for quarterbacks to kind of make their mark on the recruiting trail.
All right, so let's start with the most recent domino to fall. Quarterback Walker White, he committed on Friday to Auburn, but the reason why it was a surprise was because most people thought he was going to end up at Clemson. How was Auburn able to land him and make this QB domino fall so early?
You know, the way he explained it, Josh, he just had that feeling when he was on the Auburn campus. You know, obviously he praised Clemson, Garrett Riley, Dabo Swinney. They got the last visit from him before he made that decision, and most people thought he was leaning towards the Tigers of the ACC, not the Auburn Tigers in the SEC. But Hugh Freeze, Philip Montgomery, the new OC there at Auburn, did a great job laying out that plan. He likes the offensive scheme. Obviously, Hugh Freeze has a great track record developing quarterbacks, making them shine in his offense. And I think it came down to that gut feel where he felt best about, and that went to Auburn.
Yeah, really interesting because of what it does down the line, right? So Walker White, instead of committing to Clemson, goes to Auburn. Now you look at Clemson and you say, well, they still need their QB. You look at where the QB dominoes could fall. I go to Jaden Davis out of North Carolina, the number 2 quarterback in the country. A lot of people throughout the fall thought Michigan was the team to beat, but now you got Clemson here who needs a QB. And Michigan has had a tumultuous offseason with the Harbaugh NFL rumors, a change at OC for Michigan. Is Clemson in line to maybe pull a Jaden Davis where maybe he should have been going to Michigan?
Obviously Clemson made a move at OC, obviously bringing in Garrett Riley. There's not a real connection there, at least right now, going back to Riley's days at TCU with Jaden Davis. So I think they're big relationship people, the Davis family, where they feel comfortable. Now, he's been camping at Clemson with Dabo since he was a small little child. He knows that campus well. He knows about Dabo Swinney, the culture there at Clemson. I think from what I've heard, this could be a complete reset, quarterback board reset for Clemson. Let Riley get in, identify who he thinks could fit into his scheme now. They've made that change, and Davis could be one of those guys, could be Jake Merklinger, could be other guys emerge with new Clemson offers. We know Clemson doesn't offer too many players at any position, much less quarterback. So I think the coming weeks will be pretty telling. Does Clemson get Davis on campus in March? What I'm hearing from the Clemson side of things is I've heard the QB board just the term reset. Let Riley get in. Obviously, he knew Walker White. He had White in camp before with TCU connections. They had that relationship already. I think he emerged pretty quickly as that number 1 guy because his familiarity with White and then vice versa. So obviously, when White chose Auburn, I've heard that term reset a little bit with around the quarterback position at Clemson.
All right, Clemson slowing things down. They're going to take a look at the entire quarterback landscape. While they're doing that, you guys do me a favor. Like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. We have all the latest recruiting intel and the biggest news in this 2024 cycle. We also do a ton of college football content. Subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. Chad, the biggest reaction at quarterback usually comes from the top. When the top number 1 guy makes his decision, you start seeing dominoes fall. So let's go back to the top and start at number 1, Dylan Raiola. This has seemingly been a UGA-USC battle this offseason. What are you hearing when it comes to Dylan Raiola?
Yeah, I mean, Raiola had the impact last year when he committed to Ohio State. We were just talking about Jaden Davis. The buzz was around Ohio State with Jaden Davis. Right. All of a sudden, Raiola visits, commits, and that domino effect has on Jaden Davis, taking a step back, going to look at Michigan, Penn State, Clemson, other schools. So it's happening all the time. So obviously, when Raiola decommitted, it opened up other doors for Ohio State guys to go out there and target quarterbacks. So yes, a lot rests on what Dylan Raiola does. And right now, I think 3 schools have the momentum, and that's USC, Georgia, and Nebraska. Everybody knows he's connected to Nebraska. Dad played there. Uncle coaches there now. He'll be at Nebraska a little bit over a month from now. He'll be at Georgia in about a month from now. He was at USC late in January, had a great trip to LA, spent a lot of time with Lincoln Riley. Him and his family enjoyed their time there around the Coliseum. And I think it's those 3 schools right now. And I'd be a little bit surprised if he doesn't make a decision at least sometime by early summer, I would say. For right now, it's Dylan Raiola's timeline.
That'd be a big decision. And if he were to pick UGA, just hypothetically, what do you think that means for current 4-star quarterback commitment Ryan Puglisi?
Based on what I've been told, absolutely nothing. Puglisi loves Georgia. He wants to compete at Georgia, whether it's with Raiola. Georgia's made it pretty clear to him. They're looking to sign 2 quarterbacks in this class. I mean, Carson Beck's a senior. They have obviously guys behind him and Brock Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton, but that room's getting a little bit light once Carson plays this year and moves on to the NFL or whatnot. That they need 2 bodies in this cycle in that room. And they've made it pretty clear. And the feedback that I've gotten from Puglisi is I'm going to Georgia, whether it's Raiola, whether it's DJ Shockley coming back to Georgia, whoever the quarterback's going to be there, he's going to go compete. He likes Georgia. He likes the system. He likes the program. So based on the domino effect with Raiola, whether or not he goes to Georgia, I don't think, based on what I'm hearing right now, that impacts Puglisi.
Yeah, you see how all this is intertwined. So let's stay on Jake Merklinger. He's a hot name right now. He's the number 8 ranked quarterback overall. He's been linked to Tennessee, Clemson, Michigan State, Florida, several teams. But what does this new Georgia offer mean to his recruitment? Because it came this week.
Yeah, just puts him in the mix. Obviously, he's an in-state kid. Like I said, his mom went to school there. He's probably visited Georgia as much or more just from a fan standpoint and recruit too than anywhere else. I mean, obviously, I like North Carolina's spot there too. He was there in January, going back the first weekend in March to Chapel Hill for the Duke basketball game. Obviously, they have a pretty good track record right now with quarterbacks, with what's going on with Drake May, Sam Howell before that. So they're very intriguing. Then Michigan State and Tennessee, I've been there in this mix for a long time. He has great relationships there. I think it's still to be determined just where he's at, not just for Clemson, but for now, new OC Garrett Riley. How does he see that connection? Is he a potential fit there for him in that scheme? So I still think, when talking to all these quarterbacks, I think it's pretty early still for Merck. That's what he goes by. And he's a guy that's still exploring his options, talking to a lot of different schools. He's focused on basketball primarily right now. I think once things get back in the spring, you see him take some trips. I think that'll tell a lot about where his head's at and who he's really looking at in the coming months.
All right. My question is, what's USC going to do at quarterback? You got Lincoln Riley sitting there just laying in wait. He's produced such quarterbacks as Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. His resume is extensive when it comes to developing quarterbacks, and there's no shortage of guys that want to play for him. So what do you think USC is going to do at the quarterback position in 2024?
Well, based on what I'm hearing, their attention is going to that number one guy, 5-star plus quarterback, Dylan Raiola. Lincoln hasn't ever had to recruit a long list of quarterbacks. Top quarterbacks want to play for him. They want to be developed by him. They want to play in his offensive system to shine and win Heismans and get drafted. I mean, that's what quarterbacks want to do. I mean, if there's any position that he can recruit extremely well, it's quarterbacks, and I think right now, he took some time and went in with DJ Lagway, and then they were definitely in the mix there with Florida and Texas A&M and some other programs. But since Raiola's opened things back up, and even before he opened back up, there was some dialogue with Lincoln Riley. They got him back on campus. And based on what I'm hearing, Raiola is that guy for Riley right now. Again, could things shift? If they start to maybe feel he's leaning to other places, they may extend to other offers or get in the mix to other guys that are already committed somewhere else or so on. But right now, Raiola is that guy for USC.
What about the in-state quarterback, Elijah Brown, ranked number 6 overall? Is he an option for USC right now?
There hasn't been a lot of, at least back and forth conversation, communication between Elijah Brown, the great quarterback at Modern Day, right there in Santa Ana, California, and USC. Again, obviously it's early still. I think they could come back on him. He does have a USC offer. He was offered early before even Lincoln Riley got that job in LA. But the school I'm hearing the most buzz around with Elijah is actually another in-state school, the Stanford Cardinal program. So we'll keep an eye and see if anything happens in the coming months with Elijah in USC. But I think right now SC is kind of putting at least 99% of their effort into Dylan Raiola.
All right. And then they were also heavily involved with DJ Lagway, the 4-star quarterback out of Texas, prior to his commitment to the Gators. It was a bit of a surprise, actually, when Lagway chose the Gators over USC and some other schools. Do you think there's any scenario where we see USC double back on DJ Lagway?
I mean, there's always that scenario out there, Josh, for sure. I mean, you can't rule anything out anymore in recruiting, and especially with quarterbacks. And, but based on everything I'm hearing, Lagway still feels good about Florida. I mean, you see him on social media recruiting daily players to join him at the Swamp. You see the Gator emoji all the time from Lagway. And based on checking up on him in recent days, all signs point to him feeling good still at this point about Florida.
All right. There's still a lot of dominoes, a lot of quarterbacks still standing. Like you said, it doesn't seem like guys are in a rush right now in early February. But when do you think that we're going to start seeing some of these major decisions being made?
Yeah, I think the coming months, Josh, I think obviously things open back up in March. You'll see some guys starting to get out again and take some unofficials. I think obviously starting in April, mid-April, they can start taking OVs. Some guys are talking about getting that done pretty early in the process, spring games. I think you'll see these guys start to fall off this board at quarterback position. I would say, April, May. I'm not ruling out even something in March to happen with certain guys, but I think more April, May, early summer, I think you'll really start to see that domino effect going with numerous guys at this position coming off the board.
Do you think if Dylan Raiola were to make like an early spring decision that we could see maybe an even earlier run on the quarterbacks? Do you think it's something like a linchpin just waiting to be pulled and then we could tumble on down with the Dominos?
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I mean, obviously, he's kind of focused on a certain group of schools. So I do think if he was to say commit, just say commit to Nebraska. Where does USC go? Do they offer new guys? They try to come back in on a guy like Elijah Brown? Do they try to maybe go back and flip Lagway from Florida? Do new guys emerge, in this 24 cycle for Lincoln Riley? Does Georgia offer 3 or 4 more quarterbacks if Raiola commits, next month in March to Nebraska or even USC? So I definitely think you'll see a reaction on the Nebraska side. If Raiola does not pick Nebraska, they're basically waiting. They're going to wait for him. They pretty much told him, and other quarterbacks know this too, we're not going to let you commit or even target you until Raiola makes his decision. So I think you'll definitely see, if he doesn't pick Nebraska, some domino effect there in Lincoln as well.
All right, this was a great time to sit here and reset the quarterback board for 2024. I'm sure it's a topic that we're going to continue to hit on throughout the offseason. Chad, thanks. The 2023 class ended with Georgia finishing second behind Alabama. But it seems like Kirby Smart was not happy sitting behind Nick Saban in any form. And the Dogs are off to a torrid start in recruiting for 2024. Looking at some of their early commitments, I start to ask myself, could this be the best class ever? Texas A&M's 2022 class is currently considered the best class ever. But Georgia in 24 is already stacking number 1 players at their position. Safety Peyton Woodyard, tight end Landon Thomas, and cornerback Ellis Robinson kind of set the foundation of this number 1 class. But let's take a look at some of the top targets remaining on the board. You got number 1 QB Dylan Raiola, the number 2 wide receiver in the country Mike Matthews, the number 2 linebacker in the country Sammy Brown, the number 1 edge Colin Simmons, the number 2 edge Edric Houston. If you're seeing a theme here, it's a bunch of number 1 and number 2 players at their position. Chad, give me some latest intel on Georgia's top targets.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there, Josh. Starting with the guys you listed, obviously Dylan Raiola at the top, 5-star plus quarterback from out in Arizona. Obviously, Georgia offered him first. He has a great connection with that staff. Todd Monken, Kirby Smart, Mike Bobo is very much involved as well. And I think right now 3 schools are to watch, and that's Georgia, Nebraska, USC. He'll visit Georgia and Nebraska in March. He was at USC in January. Georgia's very much in the race for Dylan Raiola. You mentioned Mike Matthews, obviously a 2 sports star, recently offered to play both basketball and football by the Auburn Tigers. Right now, he's focused on the basketball playoffs at Parkview High School. He is a top target for Georgia. Georgia wants to keep those top guys, as they call them, top dogs in state. Mike Matthews is one of those guys. You have to watch. I think numerous schools are still involved with Matthews from out in West Coast, USC, closer to home, Clemson, of course, USC, Tennessee, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State's mentioned, Alabama. So I think still pretty early, but Georgia's definitely, I think, in that top group for Mike Matthews. Then you have Sammy Brown right there in Georgia's backyard, an elite linebacker from Jefferson High School. I think this one comes down to a showdown between Clemson and Georgia. Georgia is obviously high on his list. He's high on theirs as well. They would love for Sammy Brown to come in and join DeMarcus Riddick, a 4-star linebacker already committed from the state of Alabama to Georgia. Then you have Colin Simmons. Colin was on campus for a couple of days. The national championship celebration weekend in January had his mom, who was really his best friend, there with him, and both loved Athens, both loved the coaching staff, both loved Georgia. I think Georgia's put them in a great position to get a return visit, likely an OV from the star out of Texas. And he obviously sees what they've done up front on the defensive line with Trey Scott and that staff, and how he can be versatile and really improve his draft stock. So Georgia's in a great spot early, I think, for Colin Simmons. Then you have Edric Houston, a couple of guys there at Buford. Edric, obviously, an elite D lineman. You have his teammate KJ Bolden as well. With Edric, he's around that top 10, top 12, but Georgia's definitely squad, I think I would say, in that top 3 or 4 group for sure. They're up against the likes of Clemson, Alabama, numerous other schools. But Edric Houston, KJ Bolden, 2 major targets out of that powerful Buford program for Georgia. They're both high on the Bulldogs.
What is Kirby Smart doing right now that sets him apart from a lot of other programs when it comes to recruiting?
I think he's relentless. I think he's consistent. The same way he coaches on the sideline, very detailed. He's very focused on every single play, what's going on, what's happening, the alignment, the details, being consistent, and just trying to figure out the best way to win. It's the same way off the field for Kirby Smart. He expects his coaches to work just like he does, which is recruit nonstop, stay in communication with the player, the family, whoever their inner circle is, and to keep it real. I think the kids like what Kirby does and that staff does. They don't sugarcoat. They don't promise you to play early, come in and start as a freshman. Just come be a part of what we've built and established at Georgia, and you'll get developed. Bet on yourself to compete and mature as a player. And if you do, you're going to, number one, probably win. Number two, get drafted.
So, Chad, does this Georgia class in 2024 have a chance to top what Texas A&M did in 22 for the best class ever?
It definitely looks to be in that at least conversation for potentially doing that. I think we saw out what Alabama was signed with 7 5-stars last year. A&M had a historic class the year before. Georgia seems to be in position to challenge that here in 2024, where they have already committed. And the guys that seem to be having Georgia, at least in their top 1 to 2 schools, as a lot of decisions will be made in the next 3 or 4 months. And Georgia's in a great position to land quite a few of those guys.
Yeah, we're going to keep tracking them. They currently have 10 commitments. They're sitting at number 1 overall. Chad, thanks for joining the Inside Scoop today.
Yep, anytime. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.